All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's going to be busy. Same for tomorrow. So for those of you guys that are here at school today, all right, we have our cell lab today. And if we finish our cell lab, we might be planting some seeds. During first period, the cell lab took the entire class period. Like people were walking out of the door after the bell, right? And so we'll just kind of play it by ear. We had a great time in the cell lab. For those of you guys that are at home, your main focus today, once we're done with our Zoom, is going to be making sure that you have completed your 4.2 vocab, your 4.2 videos, and the questions that go with all three of those videos, and the article. Okay, those are all due tomorrow, Friday, 11:59 p.m. Don't forget about your Unit 4 notes. Those are all going to be due next Wednesday. On Monday of next week, you guys are going to have your 4.2 quiz on cell transport. Tuesday, we'll go over the quizzes as a review for your exam. You'll have your Unit 4 exam next Wednesday. That will cover cells, cell organelles, and cell transport, okay? I am going to talk to you guys a little bit about cell transport today, but what I talked to you guys about today is not a replacement for the PowerPoint and the videos that I have made, right? I've been, doing some long and hard thinking and soul searching and wondering if the view count for those videos would increase as the semester progressed. But unfortunately, I have almost 60 honors students, and most of the videos have less than 40 views. And so I've decided that, well, apparently you guys don't need any opportunities for extra credit. So, because you don't even need the things I'm already doing. So unfortunately, for the rest of the semester, we will progress with no opportunities to add points or to make up lost causes. Because if you're not going to take advantage of the hard work that I'm putting in already, why would I add extra work when you could have just done the work the first time, okay? So make sure to be watching those videos. Some of you may be thinking, why do I need to watch those videos? I took that quiz yesterday and got a 100. Well, that was actually my mistake. I had set the exam or the quiz for yesterday to initially accidentally pop up at 11:59 p.m. last night. And a couple students emailed me yesterday morning, and they're like, where's the quiz? And I was like, oh, wow, my mistake. And so then when I reassigned the quiz, I accidentally assigned the CP quiz to all the classes. So if you took that quiz and you were like, wow, this feels pretty easy, all right, that was the standard level. Now I'm going to count my mistake. You benefit, right? And at the end of the day, I still get to see what it is you do know and do not know. So that was definitely like y'all's highest quiz average. I think the average is like low 90s. So that is always an exciting thing. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, so those are the kinds of questions you'd see on the North Carolina EOC. Okay, so there's the state expectations of you guys, and there's my expectations of you guys, right? Because if we all really just followed what the state was saying, well, we'd be the bottom of the barrel of not only the country, but probably the world, right? Because you guys are far more intelligent than the state would give you credit for. And that's why I expect more out of you guys. So I'm going to count that quiz, and so it's a nice little boost or win in some of y'all's sales. Now, some of you still haven't done it. That's 10 points automatically, right? What are you doing? You went from 100, because most people got a 100, to an automatic 90, right? Please stop doing assignments late. It's annoying, and it's really sinking some of y'all's ships incredibly fast. I don't know what on earth you could possibly be doing for 24 hours on Wednesday that would prevent you from taking. How long did that quiz take you? 10 minutes? Maybe? I mean, literally it took you 10 minutes, right? All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to quickly talk to you guys about a couple things. Sorry, I put this meme in here this morning because it's been a kind of crazy morning already for me. And I asked my students, because you ever seen that meme before? And I was describing the dog drinking coffee in the fire, and they're like, no. I was like, what? That's like one of the best memes ever, right? I think this sums up 2020 in a nutshell right here. All right, so I want to quickly talk to you guys about the cell membrane. Oh, no, I got to exit really quick so I can get my little cool pencil. And also I'll record this. That way I can share with anybody who may have accidentally slept in. I'll have to excuse the annoying little countdown that's about to start. But it's all right. I don't know about you guys, but countdowns like that kind of give me anxiety. All right. Let's talk about the cell membrane, okay? And so again, this is not the end-all be-all. Just watching this, listening to me right now is not going to necessarily justify or be a sufficient amount of information to pass or to really understand the cell membrane or transport. Cell membranes are made of what? What is the primary component of a cell membrane, or any membrane in a cell for that matter? Phospholipid, right? Exactly. So what does a phospholipid look like? Well, we've got our glycerol phosphate head right here and our fatty acid tails. Now, because the glycerol has a phosphate group attached to it, it changes its chemical behavior and characteristic. The phosphate head is known as being hydrophilic. In other words, yay, it's attracted to water. Water is polar, phosphate groups tend to be polar, and so they're attracted to one another. Now, the fatty acid tails, like most lipids, are insoluble in water. And they're insoluble because they're nonpolar. And if something is nonpolar and water's polar, they don't get along, right? They're not attracted to one another. So the fatty acid chains here are known as hydrophobic. And what does phobic mean? If you have a phobia, it's kind of like a fear of, right? And so the fatty acid chains, they don't like water. They're going to try to hide from water, okay? And so even if I just had a little test tube full of phospholipids and I dumped them into a beaker of water, they would self-assemble into a membrane. It's wild, right? They just naturally do that, kind of the same way that if I took a bunch of magnets and threw them in a bag, what are the magnets going to do? They're all going to arrange themselves, right, based on their attractions. And phospholipids will do the same thing. So what do they typically look like? Well, remember our cell membranes have how many layers? One or two? Two. That's why we call them phospholipid bilayers. So there's actually two layers of phospholipids. And they orient themselves like this. Okay, you have to excuse my poor drawing. I'm just trying to be as quick as possible, right? And so you got your phosphate heads facing either the outside of the cell, which is sometimes referred to as the extracellular fluid or the environment. The cells that you guys look at today that are floating around my fish tank, right? They're just floating around in water, right? So that would be the environment. And the cell membrane separates the environment from the cytoplasm. Now, what do you think the primary ingredient or the primary component of the cytoplasm is? You guys have probably learned about this your whole life. Living things are mostly made of what? Most of your weight, your mass, can be attributed to what? Water. Yeah, right? And so your cytoplasm is mostly water. And so when you put phospholipids together to form a membrane, the phosphate groups face the environment, which is usually water, right? If you think about all your cells floating around in your body, all your fluids, blood, you know, your intestinal fluids, right? They're all going to be water-based. And then the cytoplasm is water-based, right? So it orients themselves like this. And because of the chemical nature and the characteristics of the phospholipid, not everything can easily pass through it, right? If they have conflicting chemical personalities, they're going to repel each other. But some molecules can easily pass through. Some molecules need a little help. And that's where proteins come in, right? You can have these transmembrane proteins that create channels, so large molecules can easily move through. Some proteins act as carrier molecules. They have a specific shape. And then once they bind with a particular molecule, they'll actually change shape and move it across the membrane like a little carrier. And then some act as pumps. And then we have some proteins that just are like kind of embedded on the outside or just on the inside. And they'll have these crazy like receptors, a lot of these molecules sticking out of them. And that allows cells to bump into each other and to communicate. But it also allows cells to identify things in their environment that they may want to bring in or they may want to keep out. Okay. Yeah, right. And so there might be a molecule, maybe a neurotransmitter or some kind of hormone that has that exact shape. And if it bumps into that receptor, it fits, causes a chemical reaction. It might cause the cell to bring it in, or it might just cause chemical changes inside of the cell. Okay. Now let's quickly talk about the methods and the madness of bringing things in and out of a cell. We call that cell transport. Now, one form of cell transport is passive. And so it does not require any energy, right? Molecules are going to do this on their own accord. We see this often in nature and in physics. If I had a glass vial of cologne and I dropped it, knocked it off my desk and it shattered on the floor, Who's going to smell it first? People in the front row. But eventually it'll spread all the way back there, won't it? And that's because molecules naturally want to go from high concentration, and they always want to spread out. It's just like if one of you guys ate 5 bean burritos last night, maybe you were a little bubbly on the bus this morning, and you may have expelled a flatulent. Highly concentrated inside of your intestines, finds a way out, and once it gets out of your body, what does it do? Spreads out throughout the bus, right? Molecules naturally want to spread out, right? They want to go from high concentration to low concentration. So on occasion, there might be a lot of something outside of your cell. It's highly concentrated, it wants to get the heck away from each other, and they might passively make their way into your cell. Or the opposite, maybe you've got a lot of waste products that your cells are making, they're highly concentrated on the inside, and they want to get out. That's passive transport. Passive transport molecules move from high concentrations, and they move passively to lower concentration. They like to spread out until they reach what is known as equilibrium. Until every molecule is an equal distance apart. I like to think about this example, right? If you start up on top of your hill in your wagon at high elevation, does it require any energy for you to ride down the hill? No, it's a very passive experience. It's really fun to go sledding and snowboarding, right? It's passive. You whee, right? You're letting the natural tendency of things unfold, and you're just along for the ride. That's exactly how passive transport works. There are 3 types. You got diffusion. Like every time I inhale, there's more oxygen in the air than there is in my blood. So oxygen goes from high concentration and diffuses into my bloodstream. There's way more carbon dioxide in my bloodstream than there is in the air. And so every time I exhale, it passively diffuses out. So diffusion is molecules moving from high to low with no energy. And then you've got osmosis, right? When I drink water, if I drink a pure cup of distilled water, pure water, would you not agree that that's highly concentrated? Yeah, if you measure the concentration, it'd be all 100% water. Are my cells 100% water? No. And so by taking that solution and drinking that distilled water, 100% water, where's that water going to want to go? It's going to want to go everywhere throughout my body, right? It's going to go right into my cells. And do I need to expend energy to get that to happen? No, right? In fact, it'll even start before you swallow the water, right? It'll find its way right into the cells of your cheek and in your tongue, right? You've probably seen the movies, like someone's wandering the desert and they're like passed out, they're unconscious, right? And they take a rag and put water in it and like squeeze drips on their mouth. Because obviously you wouldn't pour a glass of water in someone's mouth if they're unconscious. They're unconscious because they're dehydrated. So you put some water in their mouth or on their lips, and the water would make its way passively into their cells. It's kind of neat, right? That's also why in the wintertime, you need to carry around chapstick because the air gets really dry. And so where does all the water in your lip cells want to go? Yeah, it wants to go into the air because they're highly concentrated in your lips and they make their way out and our lips get all dry, right? That's just passive. It just happens, right? And then you got facilitated diffusion, which is where the molecules want to go in or they want to go out. Maybe they're too big and they need some help. And so you got some big protein channels that just create openings. It's still passive. Now, what about when we need energy? Sometimes we have to actively move things across the membrane, and that's known as active transport. Active transport goes against the grain, right? We're moving something from low concentration to high concentration. And so that's kind of pushing something against its natural desire. In the same way that after we ride the wagon to the bottom of the hill, if we want to get it from bottom to the top, what do we have to do? Yeah, we have to actively invest energy because that wants to stay there, right? Pushing it up that hill is going against the gradient, against the grain, against the grade, against the current. And that requires energy. What form of energy, what molecule do you think our cells are going to use for active transport? Produced by the mitochondria. Yeah, ATP. And believe it or not, this is one of the main reasons we make ATP for active transport. Right now, your brain is sending an electrochemical signal to your heart, what's known as the SA node, and it makes your heart contract. That signal from your brain to your heart would not be possible without active transport. You've got these sodium-potassium pumps found along your nerves that are constantly pumping sodium and potassium in different directions. And it actually creates like a little electrochemical gradient, right? And then our hearts contract because our heart muscles are actively pumping calcium through protein pumps in and out and in and out. And our cells use this to the advantage. Make sure to watch the videos. So active transport includes things like protein pumps. If you ever hear the words like, pumping or actively moving or using energy to move, that's all going to be active. You've also got endocytosis, which is where a cell would engulf something. Some of you guys might be lucky enough to see that today when you're looking at the algae cells in the pond water. You might see a unicellular eukaryote swimming around its environment and actively just kind of swallowing things, right? On a large scale, that's endocytosis. There's actually a couple different types, but you look at the video for those. And then you might also see cells releasing waste. That would be exocytosis. Sometimes it just looks like the cell takes a poop, right? You'll just see it, and this little weird bubble forms inside of it, and the bubble moves to the outside of the cell, and the cell just kind of releases it into the environment. Now, that's active, believe it or not, right? Because the cell has to actively move that molecule out of the cell. Okay, so for those of you guys at home, vocab, videos and their questions, and the article, stop turning in assignments late. It's killing some of y'all's grades. And again, you guys have already forfeited any extra credit opportunities because of your lack of participation. I spent a lot of time and effort making those videos for you guys. And so it makes me sad because the key to your successes are in those videos, especially if you're interested in taking AP Biology. So if you're at home right now, go ahead and hit the road. And for all of you guys in here right now, you guys can go ahead and sign out because I'm going to shut down the Zoom because the time has come to start our lab.